I'm very happy with President Obama's plan overall, and I'm relieved that it's not the strict 16-month timeline he originally indicated. It's a little slower than that. More importantly, it leaves a substantial residual force after the drawdown is quote-unquote complete or over. And Mr. Obama now wants to argue that these forces after August 2010 will not have a combat mission and will not be combat forces consistent with his campaign pledge. That's a little bit of a semantic game, which, frankly, many of us are more than willing to put up with as long as the policy winds up being good, because we're going to have a fair amount of combat capability in Iraq even after August 2010, and we will have the capability, therefore, to execute combat operations with Iraqis if called upon to do so. So the idea that you can somehow define the end of the war based on a Washington calendar is, frankly, a little silly. This is a war where, to put it as the military often does, the enemy gets a vote. And the idea that the enemy is going to somehow conform to President Obama's schedule, or that the Iraqis can be put on an exact timeline for when they will have complete responsibility for this war and not need any help, these ideas are frankly a bit of a stretch. But the basic notion that the war is evolving fast and that we can substantially further reduce our role next year, I think, is correct. And let me put the Iraqi situation in a little bit of perspective. In 2006 in this country, we had a big debate, should we say that Iraq is in civil war or not? The administration did not want to. A lot of news organizations said yes. And I think it was a fair deduction that when 3,000 to 4,000 civilians per month were being killed and 100,000 per month being driven from their homes, that it was right to call that a war. I don't think Iraq is in a state of such war any longer, with the exception of the northern city of Mosul. But I think that it's still a violent place. It's certainly not a safe country. But I would put it on a spectrum or on a scale along with countries like Mexico, South Africa, Russia, Colombia, countries that have high levels of violence that are essentially almost at a steady state and don't totally rip the countries apart, but are, of course, very problematic and tragic for the individuals affected. That's the way to think about Iraq today. It's in a violent state of peace, which is oxymoronic, but perhaps the best way I can describe it. Will Iraq stay that way, or will it get better, or could it get worse? I don't know. I think it's on a trajectory to get better because the central government and the military and police are doing a good job. However, there are some ongoing big tensions because this is a young democracy where different groups want different things and disagree on how certain issues should be resolved. The one that Ken Pollack and I saw most notably in our February 2009 trip to Iraq was about Arab-Kurdish issues in the north. And frankly, without getting into all the details right away, those are issues of land and oil and power and money, old-fashioned issues that countries and groups have fought about for centuries. President Obama has been very smart. He's tried to look at Iraq today and say, what opportunities do we have with this young democracy? Let's not keep having the historical debate about whether it was worth it or not. We are where we are. In terms of being able to say, though, that the mission is over, certainly not before the end of 2011. The Obama drawdown that is now scheduled to take place over the next year and a half will not be an end to the mission because it will leave us with more troops in Iraq than we have in any other country in the world right now. It will be more troops, 50,000, than we have in Japan, more than we have in Germany, roughly comparable, but I think a little bit more, and more than we have in Afghanistan today. Now, by August 2010, Afghanistan may have nudged ahead of Iraq, but at the moment, there's no place in the world where we have 50,000 troops in one country, except Iraq, and we still will next summer.